What's up, Zox fan? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now, we're going to be getting into not only out-of-the-box value on Batsby, but also on Ninfoniel, quote-unquote, the Rengoku Destroyer, right? So with that, I really want you guys to make sure that you understand, of course, the bare minimum, some of the earlier areas you'll be able to use these characters, maybe even some of the early thought processes and like your builds, and ultimately really understanding like even with some of the lattice investment, it's still going to require certain builds in order for you to be able to see X amount of damage. And of course, I'll show you guys these things so you can, fully understand, right? But let's start off with Batsby, all right? So the boy Batsby, I got to say that, again, I feel like Batsby is your traditional damage dealer. When we're talking about like overall investment, like out the box investment, I've been using him at level 1 on everything, but I would say minimum, he definitely wants that like skill 3 or level 3 on the skill 3. I feel like that definitely is going to help him out a ton. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is going to be a 5 out of 5 out of 5 character. I'm not even going to like sugarcoat it. Like I said, full transparency, 5 out of 5 character, right? Now, when we're also looking at like the build on this character, I definitely would say like a Fury, Momentum, Fury Edge is probably going to be like one of his best in slots. You can use Swift Raid on him, to be honest, because that's what's going to be accessible for some people a little bit earlier. And then when we're looking at like the Shell, White Fang, Count, I would say are going to be like the two options. Both work, but also you have to consider the setups, right? So that's another big component, which is basically the entire game, right? So of course, with that, where are some of the like earlier areas you can use or see, or like would even think about placing a character like him? Right. So we actually go over to things like Nico Nana. I think that this is definitely a really good spot for him to work early, because again, Nico Nana is one of the first like dungeons a lot of players are trying to clear for Inferno gear, or Inferno shells, I should say, from here, which they're all good. And as you can see, like even with my setup, like I'm using a freaking Kloss right now. This is like literally slapped together, by the way. But just kind of point in case is that like he does work as long as you give him the debuffs. He's going to do the respective damage that he needs to do. And so even with this setup, like not being that optimized, I will say, with his extension, with the vulnerability proc, him and like Nilu kind of conflict on that because she also procs vulnerability, but he does it himself. So I guess it doesn't matter as long as she goes first because then he can hit into it. But ultimately, with a character like him, if you give him like the turn meter rotation, you're going to see him paired up with obviously like any other DPS, like with Lilies, Nilu still gives it, Kachi still gives it. But as you can see though, 42-second clear, with like, again, it's pretty respectable. Set up 2 5-stars, a Kloss who's actually disadvantaged, which really that could just be a Dyna, right? And then GG, that wins, right? Now I'll have it probably pop up on the screen because these are some of the other areas that I feel like he's definitely going to be nice for people that are still trying to diversify their account. It's going to be like areas like the Anasync Echo. It's going to be Ethernet Rally, and then of course in some cases Ember Track. I will say like for Anasync Echo, like when you fight like the Nico Nana boss, for example, that's a like first like kind of like stomp for a lot of players, or even like in some of the earlier ones like Heinrich, and there's some other ones that are pretty like annoying to get through, especially like in the earlier investment parts of your progression. He can help out there a ton, right? Because you have bigger teams, you are able to take advantage of all the debuffs that are being proc there, and he's a wave AoE hitting unit, right? So that's what makes him really good. The extension, like I said, is huge because you can extend speed downs, attack downs, defense breaks. So it makes him really good in those scenarios. And then even in things like the Ethernet Rally, where there's like this big emphasis on attribute, this of course is going to play well into areas like the Rumble Cage, and of course in areas like the Infinity Train, where you need to have a more diverse roster to be able to have options to be able to get through that content. So I think that he does present that, which is really important. Now, of course, when we're looking at some of the requirements to look at him in other areas, I want to kind of talk about that. So we're going to go over to things like, for example, Doki Doki, because that is an area he can actually work in. Actually show you guys too is the gear requirement. And this is something that I feel like, when we talk about, hey, just get this unit and do this, this is also with the idea that you already should have been doing X thing. And I think some units are being pulled with the notion of being able to do those things to begin with. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. But as you can see, with Batsby, with investment, he's actually able to like basically do the one shot that Ramoka is able to do. Now, in this scenario, he's definitely like pretty quick. They're going to have to like reset him up right here. Go for the slumber. Gets that attack up buff. And they, of course, are getting a little bit of an early showcase here of Ninfoniel because she's like really great support here. But as you can see, he goes back in. Boom. One shots, right? So he has the ability to do that damage. You need to have him on a momentum, fury edge count. And that, of course, is considering that where do you get this count from, right? This count means that you've already been farming Rengoku. That's basically what that means, right? So this isn't going to be necessarily like the out-of-the-box build for him. The other thing is, too, is like I said, level 3 for that turn meter manipulation, so you can rotate for something like Doki Doki is going to be pretty important. But again, outside of the lattice investment, which I could argue most people could probably get 2 perfect lattices or might have 2 perfect lattices, but they might not necessarily have the build because a lot of players are still trying to clear Rengoku or still haven't gotten this drop, right? So I think that transparency is really, really important because that's what's ultimately going to like have people falling into that pit trap of making certain investment choices, not even actually having the proper builds to make these things work. Now, obviously, there are some other builds that will work, but I think the builds that are going to give you the more consistency, either, like I said, slowing things down is going to help you a ton. If not having the exact builds that are really going to ramp the damage the way that you need to, that's something that's really, really important. Now, the same thing that also, like, you know, I could say can be said about Doki Doki, can be said about Aurora as well. When we're talking about some of the stronger, like, you know, like setups, like as you can see, there's like one right now. This is going to have him at, again, same thing on account, Fury Edge, Keen Eye, or sorry, Fury Edge, and Keen Eye. And it's a 513, right? So this is like even more investment. And the thing is like I said, he's a traditional damage dealer. So it's going to be that regardless. Now, the overall investment on this team comp is fairly low considering that, you know, there's 2 5-stars on the team, which is like respectable. But I think that this is also kind of playing on like the string of like hoping there's enough well prayers that also proc, because if the well prayers don't proc or not enough do, you're not going to be able to actually get that debuff off of him so that he can like properly like do damage, right? So other than that, though, you are able to get a respectable amount of damage out of him, but this is considering that now you have that lattice and you have that in-game build on him, right? So if you don't have those things, then obviously you're not going to be obviously able to do like certain things that you're seeing now. But I will say in earlier situations, like if you're climbing up into Hell 4 or you're going from like Nightmare into Hell, he's still going to perform extremely well. It's just that in order for you to see this level of performance, you're going to really have to start putting some lattice into him, right? So this should actually finish up the fight here. Boom, and there you go, right? So he can perform extremely well in both. In full transparency, is this a character that you're going to be pulling for? Personally, I think that Batsby is going to be a nice character to have out of the box, but I still think that he falls into a little bit more of a playstyle preference of like, you know, even like if we were like mentioning a little bit of PvP, he does like fall into more of a cleave setup, and he does actually do that fairly well, by the way. So if you are looking to maybe use him in that, then that's also a thing, but I also think that that still is going to be considering some skill up investment. Ultimately, this is a character that you got to commit to, and I'm going to talk about that in a whole nother separate video, because I think that that's one of the big things that like we kind of are faced with right now. And yeah, I mean, that's just like what it is. Like, so if you are going to use him, he does have some value early, but I definitely think that you'll see more of that value with the investment, right? Now, moving on to Ninfoniel, I think that like with her, she's actually going to be bringing another set of value to the table. She is our rotation support, healing, shielding, attack upping, immunity coverage. But this was supposed to be the Rengoku destroyer, right? Now, I will give the disclaimer and just the honest truth. I feel like this character is definitely very broken when she is max. But out of the box and even in between investment, not so much, right? Now, granted, does it mean that she doesn't work? No, I'm not saying she doesn't work, but the idea that she's just going to like decimate or destroy Rengoku, no, that's not necessarily the case. Can she help with the fight? Sure, right? But this is also under the notion that you're going to be doing what I would say is like a somewhat specific setup so that you can actually make it work. If we're actually looking here, skill 3 is something I feel like you have to invest in if you don't want it to get slapped off easy. And really the reason why you're investing in this is because this is going to help you with more consistency. Up until then, I tried farming, and I even did it on stream where we were doing like runs of Rengoku with her with no lattice investment. It was super inconsistent. Anyone that's telling you it's consistent either has god tier gear or they're capping. It's one of the two. Because the other thing is like I said, if we're just talking about simply the shield, it is a fact that shield is going to get slapped off with no lattice investment, period. There's nothing you can do about it. So with that, it is going to be required that you actually run her on a Codex of Magic so that she can actually reapply that shield so you can actually take advantage of it. Now, if you're running a faster comp where you get to go before the ads do, then yeah, sure, you get to use it once, but then it's still going to get slapped off and you need to reapply it because it doesn't last, right? So with that, as far as the build, just real simple, Swift Rush, we got her on a little bit of Wellspring, and then of course Swift Smite for the speed, mainly focusing HP defense and HP bonus. And real quick, because now I'm thinking about it, I didn't actually say like the stats on Batsby. Batsby, I actually have him. If we go back real quick, I have Batsby on a crit damage, crit rate, and crit damage. So that's what I got him on. Just wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, as far as like for her, that's basically what we're running her on right now. And like I said, the main thing is just making sure she's as fast as possible. That's all you really care about. And then bulk, so that you can actually scale the shield, right? So it doesn't get slapped off as easily. Now, the thing is that if we actually were to go into, and I will say like leveling the character does help. That's for both of them. So for his damage, leveling him to 50 and leveling her to 50 for her scaling or her shield will help you out a ton, right? But if we actually go to some of the areas that you can use her in, I definitely would say like one of the predominant areas obviously is Rengoku. But for the Rengoku setup, in order for her to like kind of work, it's kind of still going to be like a Lily class setup. And the thing is that like, again, with more investment, I feel like she could work in different comps, but in earlier investment, you're really trying to take advantage of that shield as quick as possible because it doesn't really, like I said, it doesn't last long. Like I already got it slapped off, like, before I even got to get a turn. So that already kind of cooked that potential damage, right? And so that's something that you have to kind of factor in when you're actually doing these runs. So we'll reset it just so we can actually get all the debuffs here. There we go. And so, yeah, that's something that you have to actually factor. It's like, okay, how quick is my team? How much damage can I actually do? Do I have an in-game build? And like I said, I'm going to always be transparent with you guys. A lot of like the showcases and some of the builds you're seeing already have like people that have farmed and have done things like Rengoku, maybe with slower teams and to their faster teams. So that's something that like you have to kind of consider. If you're not even farming Rengoku yet, you have to maybe consider. I would recommend still doing some of the other variation teams like Vice setups. Like I said, I use Ren for a little bit. I just feel like that's going to give you more success than you trying to push like using this specific setup and you don't even actually have a consistent baseline yet, right? So that's just my opinion there. I think we get the kill here, right? So that's about a minute clear. In most cases, I usually do it in about 45. But that's just like, again, kind of showing her value there. You get the kind of in and out with the scaling of the shield and the attack up buffs that you get from it, but it just gets slapped off by Rengoku. But I feel like ultimately, if you really want that to last a little bit longer, she's going to need that last investment into that skill 3. So that's basically that with her for Rengoku. Some of the other areas, like I kind of actually like showed you by mistake, but hey, it doesn't matter because it is what it is. But she works in like module dungeons like Doki Doki and Aurora as well. I think again though, when we're looking at like, which I showcased earlier when we were doing the Batsby, And Doki Doki, she's there to kind of do the same thing. She ramps the attack, she grants shield, and then she's going to allow that damage dealer to be able to do their respective damage and equalizing HP if anybody gets hit, so everybody can survive. Now in Aurora, it's still going to be playing into some of the setups with, and I'll show you guys this too, with like more emphasis on like the Lily, Lilium, Lily, Yelly. Like it's still like that DPS. It could be, Lily, Shieta. Like it's still some combination of a DPS that she's basically amplifying. So she's just making it easier for them to do their respective damage. So again, if we just look at here with the Yelly, it's a 57-second clear. And I'll just show you like what it looks like, because it's kind of the same thing. They're not trying to take hits for too long, because the other thing is, like I said, is that shield, the bulkiness of it isn't that crazy, especially when you're doing like these Inferno dungeons. All right, so here we go. We got the strip from the Hoden. Linglo will remove all of that nasty damage reduction with her heal. And then Yelly should be able to actually do some pretty respectable damage here. And that's without... Yeah, I was about to say, she didn't even have the... there's the defense break. So there's the defense break now. You got that pushback. She's going to reapply it. So every setup you're going to see, she's going to have a Codex of Magic on, right? Because she needs to reapply it so that you can actually take advantage of it. Now here, we're going to see even more damage coming from the Yelly, because there's that defense break now. So there we go. So yeah, it's going to allow like characters like Yelly on the Revelation to hit harder. Obviously, Lilium is going to hit harder. So yeah, it's just going to make these runs a little bit more seamless. But this is still under the notion these are setups that are a little bit quicker. They have, like I said, the rotations down so that you're able to reapply it even after it's knocked off. So that's kind of that, right? Now I will say, like in like the other, like in some of the references that I was using for like Batsby and like other areas you can use her in, definitely places like Ethernet Rally, Ember Trek, Anasync Echoes. You could definitely use her in Infinity Train, Phantom like Theater. Like she was gonna work in those other areas, but I feel like for the main thing that she does, she definitely does need some investment. Like I said, I think personally is skill 3 and then skill 2 minimum, and that's of course going to be another maximum investment, right? That's going to be another 8 lattices that you have to kind of factor in and consider. Now, when we're giving like the final thoughts here on Ninfoniel, personally, I think she's amazing. I think that like honestly, she is like really, really good, but it's just considering the fact that she needs that investment. I feel like, again, a lot of the times when we have supports come into the game, that just kind of broadens like different combinations and setups that you can do. So that's like one of the things that I like about her, is that she's another healing option, but specifically healing option with damage amp versus like when you use Linglo. Linglo is great for healing, obviously, but she doesn't offer you anything that's going to ramp your damage. So you can kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds here. Now, I have had some people say like she just feels like a glorified like Valerian, which in some cases, sure, but again, the ramping that you get from her in those windows for faster comps does feel really good. But if you're not at that point where you're really able to take advantage of that, probably not something that you really have to go too crazy over. So ultimately, just kind of ranking both of these characters together, would these be characters that you would be both, trying to pull, or would you pick, which one would you pick over the other? In my opinion, I think that if you are looking for something that's going to give you potential long-term value, I definitely think that characters like Ninfoniel are pretty safe to pick up, because usually supports are. But I will say, like, long-term damage, Batsby is going to be pretty nuts for how he scales. I would say if I had to pick one over the other, personally, I would probably still go Ninfoniel, just because I want that coverage in like my Rengoku, for example, and I've been able to use that. In the other areas that I've been using Batsby, I personally clear fine. And I also think that even for what it's worth, he still needs that full like TLC as a DPS. Whereas like with her, it's not going to be nearly as much investment required. So that's just kind of my take there. Personally, though, I think that, you got to make the decision based off of the playstyle preference. So if you're more into like cleaving or like these shielding type characters, then that obviously is going to be a reason why you would pick these units up. But I just think that, like, for what it's worth, they are not really presenting the savior, like, you know, they're not really presenting that like kind of savior, like, you know, Rengoku destroyer until, like I said, you really invest into Ninfoniel and also factor in that your setup needs to be able to match that. So yeah, guys, that's basically going to be that with this one. I hope that this was able to give you guys some more insight and to kind of help you out with deciding on whether or not you want to pick up Ninfoniel and Batsby. But that's going to be that, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.